We were actually at the Atlanta ball field, and we were watching my younger son, Cohen, at his last T-ball game, and my older son, Ethan, he was out playing with some of the other kids. My mom, just out of the corner of her eye, saw Ethan fall to the ground. So I slowly started, walking over there, because it was a little walk, and the closer I got, the more serious I thought it looked. So then at that point I started running, and when I got to him, he was starting to curl up in a ball, and his eyes were closed and he just wasn't there. There were some other little kids standing around him, and I asked them what had happened, and they said he had gotten hit with a bat, and by the looks of him, there wasn't any blood, there wasn't anything physically that I could see wrong with him. So then he just started turning blue, so then I called back to my parents to call 911, and Brenda was at the game as well, and she was actually watching her son, which is on my younger son, Cohen's team, play, and someone had yelled to her, they're calling 911, you need to get over there to see what's going on. So she ran around, and she came over to Ethan.
I just kind of looked over my shoulder and saw Ethan laying on the ground, just lifeless. Immediately knew something was wrong, and then I saw his mom running, and his mom looked at him and looked up, and I knew it wasn't good, so I just went over to do whatever I could. Rolled him over, noticed that he was blue and not breathing. So immediately got an airway, checked for a pulse, there wasn't any, and began CPR. It seemed like forever, but I'm sure it was probably only 2 or 3 minutes. And then he took a breath, just kind of started crying, and it was the best cry I'd ever heard.
He just screamed that he didn't want to die. And then he started coughing, and he was just very upset, and that he thought he was going to die. And then by that time, the ambulance had arrived.
When Ethan came to, he was crying, and he just looked, I remember just talking to him, and he just looked at me and he's like, "You're Riley's mom." And at that time, I really didn't realize that he was a classmate of my son's. And I just immediately started crying myself, and I said, "Yeah, sweetie, I am Riley's mom." It was kind of funny because he was loaded into the Logan County paramedics ambulance, and he wanted me to go with him, and I told him that I couldn't because I didn't work on that ambulance, and he just kept going, "But Riley tells me you drive the ambulance and that you work in the ambulance, why can't you?"
And the doctors, his cardiologist the next morning had said he was diagnosed with a condition called commotio cordis. Basically since it was a blunt object that hit his heart, it immediately stopped it.
The thing that makes it so important, and why I think Brenda is a hero, is that so many times in commotio cordis cases, it happens a lot in sports, it happens to young males. A lot of times it gets confused with just getting the wind knocked out of you. I think when Brenda approached Ethan, she trusted her instincts. With commotio cordis cases, you have to start CPR. You have to start it within the first 2 minutes. Most cases, they don't survive if an AED is not used. So I mean, all of these things combined with the fact that she was not afraid to jump in. She trusted her instincts, and from that point on, it's like she had a laser-like focus of what she needed to do. I guess the biggest thing that we should ask ourselves is, if you were in that situation, would you involve yourself? Would you step in? I don't think she thinks that she's a hero. I think she's very humble about it. I think that some part of her saw her son laying there, and how easily it could have been anybody's son. And in her mind, she was just doing what she thought was right.
It was life or death, and if she hadn't been there at that particular time, then my son would not have lived. You cannot take life for granted. I mean, as sitting there at a T-ball game and hearing the kids play in the background, you just never know when an accident is going to happen. And we are so thankful that she was there at that particular moment to save our son.
Thanks for all the stuff how you did for me.